Was there interference in the 2020 presidential election? I was told it was the safest, most secure, most legitimate election of our time. Or the FBI covered up a Chinese communist plot to interfere with that election. Yesterday, the director of the FBI, Kash Patel, put out a stunning statement on X, followed by the link to an article that we're going to go through here, but check it out. FBI has located documents which detail alarming allegations related to the 2020 U.S. election, including allegations of interference by the CCP, that would be the Chinese Communist Party. I have immediately declassified the material, turned the documents over to the chairman, Grassley, for further review. That would be Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa. He is the chairman of the Intelligence Committee in the United States Senate. There's the article from Just the News, John Solomon's endeavor. FBI gives Congress intel on alleged Chinese plot to create fake mail-in ballots in 2020. What? I thought the 2020 presidential election was the most secure presidential election of our lifetimes, of American history. We've never had a more secure. There's no, what? That's got to be wrong. Well, let's read the article together, shall we? JustTheNews.com. FBI Director Kash Patel, Monday evening, that'd be last night, turned over to Congress an intelligence report raising concerns that China had mass-produced fake U.S. driver's licenses to carry out a scheme to hijack the 2020 election with fake mail-in ballots for Democrat Joe Biden. Fake mail-in ballots? That's impossible. What? I mean, it's true. Joe Biden did get more votes than any person in history, by far, like by 10 million more than Obama had gotten. I do remember that. And I do remember that in 2020, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we had extraordinary new protocols for mail-in ballots. We've never had so many mail-in ballots in our lifetimes in this country. People were using drop boxes for their mail-in ballots. People were encouraged to mail in their ballots because we had these social distancing protocols due to the pandemic where you couldn't stand in line without being 6 feet away from each other. Although, if I remember right, that social distancing protocol, Anthony Fauci said, yeah, I have no idea where that came from. Who came up with 6 feet? Nobody knows. It really didn't make a difference. But somehow on election day, it's the one protocol that triggered these mass mail-in voter efforts. And of course, with mail-in ballots, the verification process for the identity of the person mailing that ballot, it's kind of sketchy. You send in a copy of your driver's license to prove you are who you are. So you have, oh, wait a second, fake driver's license. That would make it even easier to stuff the ballot box with a whole bunch of phony votes, like 10 million phony votes that we've never seen before and we've never seen again. Huh. Crazy, isn't it? By the way, speaking of that pandemic, where did that thing start again? Oh, yeah. China. So let me get this straight. China somehow miraculously comes up with this virus out of their laboratory in February of an election year. It goes global. Our economy gets shut down. People get pissed off. We change all of our voting protocols so that everyone mails them in. And at the same time, China is making fake driver's license for mail-in ballots so people can mail in the ballots and have them get counted because there's no scrutiny on mail-in ballots. Huh. That's quite a hypothesis. Of course, none of that can be true because I've been promised that the 2020 presidential election was the most secure presidential election of our lifetime. Let's get back to the article. The newly declassified intelligence reports from August 2020 weren't corroborated or fully investigated. Huh. So the FBI had this allegation and they didn't investigate it. Instead, the report was recalled from intelligence agencies at about the time then FBI Director Chris Wray testified there were no known plots for foreign interference ahead of the 2020 election in which Biden defeated Donald Trump. Well, Biden defeated Donald Trump based on the rules and protocols that were in place at that moment in 2020. So let me get this straight. The FBI had this intelligence. They had a report. It was a whistleblower, an informant told them, yeah, China's doing this. And then the FBI recalled the report from intelligence agencies. In other words, hey, send that back. This hasn't been fully vetted. We're not going to count this. And then, right as the report gets recalled, Christopher Wray goes to Capitol Hill. He's asked, is there any evidence of foreign intervention in our election? And he can say, nope, I've got no evidence, because the report had just been recalled. That's convenient. I'm sure it's just a coincidence. More in the article. New documents were turned over to Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley, who had first raised concerns to the Bureau that the intelligence hadn't been fully vetted and instead was just dismissed, even though there was evidence of the fake licenses. Yeah, Grassley knew about this report and then it disappeared. And every time he would ask about it, there was like, yeah, we don't have anything about that. Thanks to the oversight work and partnership of Chairman Grassley, the FBI continues to provide unprecedented transparency to the People's Bureau. Patel told Just the News in a statement. To that end, we've located documents Chairman Grassley requested, which detail alarming allegations related to the 2020 U.S. election. That's how Kash Patel characterized these alarming allegations. Specifically, these include allegations of plans from the CCP to manufacture fake driver's license and ship them into the United States for the purpose of facilitating fraudulent mail-in ballots, allegations which, while substantiated, were abruptly recalled and never disclosed to the public. In accordance with Chairman Grassley's request for documents, I have immediately declassified the material and turned the document over to the chairman for further review. But hold on a minute. I mean, if this is just one standalone whistleblower or informant who says, hey, that China's doing this, and then there's no other evidence, there's nothing else to support. I mean, that's just, you can't do a full-blown FBI investigation on something like that. You can't claim that there's interference in the 2020 election just based on that. There's no other evidence, is there? Is there? Let's go back to the report. Officials who've seen the documents told Just the News the FBI had a relatively new confidential source who provided information in summer 2020 that the Chinese government was manufacturing and exporting fake U.S. driver's license as part of a plot to create voter identities for Chinese residents living in the United States so they could vote with mail-in ballots. You know how they're really insistent to make sure that there are Chinese students here and Chinese residents here? That's really an important thing for them. Wonder why. The intelligence sources claim the plot was specifically designed to benefit Biden. They also said the intelligence report was recalled within a few weeks and the allegations never fully investigated on the grounds that the source needed to be re-interviewed. Yeah, we better re-interview that guy. But here's the kicker. Another agency, U.S. Customs and Border Protection, had intercepted nearly 20,000 fake driver's licenses around the time the intelligence came in a possible corroboration of the report. So they had a whistleblower. They had an informant. He said that China's doing this. They're making fake driver's license. They're bringing them into the country. They're going to utilize them with fake identities so that they can put ballots in the mail and vote when people aren't supposed to vote and stuff the ballot box. Oldest trick in the book, right? And of course, validation of a mail-in ballot. You remember the chaos in states where they were like trying to validate all of these mail-in ballots and they were counting and it took days and days and days. It's not a meticulous process. They look at the ballot, they look at the name, they look at the driver. It looks good to me. Move on. Count that one. That's another one for Biden. Go ahead. Count that one. It's another one for Biden. They're not going to be able to tell if the driver's license is fake or not. So at the same time, they're getting an allegation that that is happening. Customs and Border Protection intercepts a shipment of 20,000 fake driver's licenses. Why would 20,000 fake driver's license be shipped into America on an election year? Christopher Wray, the head of FBI, and whatever numbnuts was in charge of various oversight, they just looked the other way. Said, nah, I don't see anything. Nothing to see here. Speaking of Christopher Wray, this was his testimony, the testimony in question. Under oath, in front of Congress, it's during the pandemic. See the face mask in the background? Do you have any evidence of a foreign plot to interfere with the election?
The intelligence community's consensus is that Russia continues to try to influence our elections, primarily through what we would call malign foreign influence, as opposed to what we saw in 2016, where there was also an effort to target election infrastructure, cyber targeting. We have not seen that second part yet this year or this cycle, but we certainly have seen very active efforts by the Russians to influence our election in 2020 through what I would call more the malign foreign influence side of things. Social media, use of proxies, state media, online journals, et cetera, an effort to both sow divisiveness and discord. And I think the intelligence community has assessed this publicly, primarily to denigrate Vice President Biden and what the Russians see as kind of an anti-Russian establishment. That's essentially what we're seeing in 2020.
There you go. You bet we have foreign intervention going on our elections. It's all Russia, 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 and they're trying to hurt Biden. Meanwhile, this guy knew of this report and specifically recalled it and sent it back for further investigation. So we're told, so that he could, I guess, truthfully answer under oath that, we don't know anything about any foreign interference in the election. Just this thing with Russia to help Trump. Oh, by the way, who was the person who made the decision to not pursue that investigation? Well, apparently, this guy, Timothy Thibault, he's the one who shut down the Hunter Biden investigation too, saying that the laptop was Russian disinformation, and he was the one who was in charge of all allegations of investigating election fraud in 2020. Good to know. If you look at contemporary stories at the time of the 2020 presidential election, here's a perfect example from NBC News. Russia tried to help Trump in 2020. Iran tried to hurt him, and China stayed out of it, according to a new report. That's in 2019. And that's the extent of the story you'll get. Am I being controversial when I say I don't think we've been told the whole truth about the 2020 presidential election? Am I being controversial when I say that a plot as described exactly as Kash Patel in these documents put forth to the Senate Intelligence Committee, that kind of plot would be exactly the kind of plot that could sway that presidential election? Remember, we're only talking about 5,000 to 10,000 votes in Pennsylvania, Georgia, Wisconsin, and Arizona, and you don't need all 4 of those states either. Did I mention that we had unprecedented upending of typical election fraud protocols because of the COVID-19 pandemic? Did I mention the COVID-19 pandemic also originated in China? And did I mention that getting fake driver's license would be a very easy way to circumvent basic fraud protocols due to mail-in ballots? I think I mentioned all that. Maybe, just maybe, we should have a full-blown investigation into what happened in 2020. I mean, I know I'm talking crazy here. The great thing is that if I had mentioned that during the Biden presidency, like 3 years ago, this video would be deleted. I would call that election interference too.